Hello and welcome back to the What the Falk Sunderland Preview Podcast. Sunderland's winning run came to an end last Saturday as we drew 1-1 with Lincoln City. However, despite not having a game in midweek, Blackpool's 3-1 win over Peterborough has the whole of Wearside dreaming of automatic promotion. On the flip side of that, we do face a return to the ground that saw our 1920 promotion push probably disintegrate before the whole world ended as we travel to Bristol Rovers' Memorial Stadium on Saturday. And to preview the game is a returning guest. We've got Max from the ever-popular Gascast. How are you doing? Are you all right, Max?
Yeah, well, I've been better, but recent results haven't been helping my mood. But generally, I'm doing pretty well, thank you. Yeah.
Good. Football aside, you're not too bad. Superb. We'll start straight from the top, I think. Swindon Town at home, huge game, relegation 6-pointer, chance for Joey Barton to put his market down, and you lose 1-0. So what went wrong on Tuesday?
Well, we had a perfectly good goal ruled out for offside, which doesn't help. But it was a very cagey game, as you would expect in a 6-pointer, especially at this stage. With it was 10 games to go. I think both teams were trying not to lose rather than going out to win, and we're just hoping to maybe snatch one or two chances that came their way. For us, we did score our chance. It was just unfortunate that the linesman saw the player in an offside position out wide, who wasn't interfering with the goalkeeper's line of sight, but ruled it out. For Swindon Town, they had one chance and they scored it. So, yeah, I mean, after they scored, I think it was on around 70, 75 minutes, our heads just dropped, which has been a consistent theme for us. Mentality-wise, we're not a group who can come back after taking a hit like that in a game. So it was just a familiar story, really. Lack of commitment for the goal. It was a free kick that hit the wall, came back out to a player and not enough bodies trying to block it. Just lackadaisical defending and went in the back of the net from the rebound. So really frustrating one. More frustrating than the goal we conceded was just the complete lack of a response in the final 15 minutes. Just panicking and misplacing passes. And like I said, that's just been a running theme this season, especially in relegation 6-pointers. We've played 11 of those against the 7 teams around us and we've only won 2. So that just sums up why we are down where we are.
Yeah, I mean, games, I know a relegation battle, maybe in a different division, but I remember them frequently every season. And I think sometimes it came down to whether you won those games or whether you stayed up or not. So I imagine there's a little bit of fear then with you not winning the games.
Yeah, well, the only team in the bottom 7 that we're yet to play twice is Northampton. They're our last fixture. But like I said, Burton got 4 points off of us, Rochdale 4 points off of us, Wigan 4 points off of us, Wimbledon 1 point off of us, but Swindon 6 points off of us. So if you don't win those games, or at least limit the total, you're going to find yourself in the world of trouble. And ironically enough, our better performances have been against sides who we haven't been expected to beat, like Accrington and Portsmouth and Shrewsbury, who were in good form at the time as well. So yeah, we're a bit of a frustrating side because we have a good performance against a good side, and then when it matters in the key games, we just capitulate.
And then talking of games you've got coming up, I was looking at your fixture list. I don't like the big Sunderland up too much because that always goes the way that you'd expect it to go. But we're all in good form. You've got us, Ipswich, Doncaster, and Lincoln in 4 of your next 5 games, I think. So I've probably asked this question already, but is a genuine concern that you're going to be sinking into League 2 before you know it because of the games you've got coming up?
I would say yes, probably. I think after last night's game, Joey Barton seemed very dejected in his post-match interview, was already talking about rebuild rather than the fight, which was a bit of a concern. But he'll know the mood in camp better than anyone. But for the fan base, I think a lot of us do think that we're down. Just the complete lack of ability to build on any positive momentum that we're building. We had a fantastic 4-1 win against Accrington Stanley not too long ago, and then the following game at home to AFC Wimbledon, just nowhere near the levels that we were playing in that game. And it does feel like with Rovers, like I said, a goal goes against us, something doesn't go our way, a decision, and the whole team, they're so young out there, some of the lads, and their heads just drop. And we just need leaders in the side and a spine, which we just don't have. So for me, we can't bring anyone in. Time's running out with 10 games to go. And I think, if I'm honest, the damage has largely been done over the past 30 games. And we're kind of staring down the barrel of the gun. Anything we can get now for me is a bonus. In my head last night on the way home from the game, I was doing the commentary. I was thinking, yeah, we are 90% going to be in League Two next season, I think, from what I've seen. And if we do manage by some miracle to get 2 or 3 wins out of nowhere and be in for the fight, I'm just not convinced if it came down to the last day that we would have the mental capacity to deliver and get over the line. But hope there's the hope that kills you, isn't it, in football? So who knows?
Yeah, it's very much. I think you could apply that to most clubs across the whole of the UK and probably beyond, isn't it? It's the hope that is clearly that's what keeps us going back. Now, the last time we spoke, obviously, feels like forever ago because of the situation in the world and the situation in football. But the last time we actually chatted, Phil Parkinson was our manager, Ben Garner was yours. Both of them have gone. Before we go on to the man that replaced him, and not for long, how do you view the Ben Garner era of Bristol Rovers now that you're out of it?
Well, pretty appalling, if I'm honest. He only had 2 wins in 20-odd games in his first season since taking over. His second win was against yourselves on the final day. And that's probably the worst thing that could have happened to the club was to win that match, because I think had he not won it, he would have been let go that summer. Would have been given the sack, I think, and we would have got someone else in. But he was given a chance that kind of gave us a little lift at the end of the season, and going into the summer, he was backed quite heavily. He brought in more under 23 players. The strategy for him was definitely to bring in young League One players who he could develop and then turn into championship ready players when they turn 24, 25 to kick us on. But we just went all in on the strategy, absolutely all in. Everyone who was brought in, bar maybe Max Amer and Jack Baldwin at centre back, was under the age of 24, and certainly not League One ready. So it's just been a disaster. I think Garner, arguably, he has statistically got the best points per game of any of the 3 managers this season. But for me, it was starting to decline under him. We were pushovers. We were a bit lightweight. The wins we did have were pretty much undeserved, kind of fluky against the XG and just like some lucky defending. So I think he did have to go when he did go. I think it was a bad appointment at the wrong time when we were flying high in the league. I think we probably should have brought in someone who could have just seen us over the line, or at least had us in a solid finish rather than 2 wins in 20. But for this season, I think the summer strategy was bad, and that's all down to him, and we're kind of paying the price for it now.
I think Sunderland fans are no stranger to managerial upheaval, shall we say, but you now want a manager number 3, as we touched on with Joey Barton. Paul Tisdale was the man in between Garner and Barton. I've kind of looked at, obviously, statistically, how many games did he win? It wasn't many. He was sacked in February after losing, I think it was 11 of 15. But from a fan's perspective, do you feel like 3 months was like long enough to judge a manager? Was he really that bad?
Yeah, he was that bad. He was some of the stuff he was saying, and just you could just tell the players weren't responding to him. Tisdale's a very magnanimous character. He's very distant. He doesn't really put his arm around players. He sees himself almost as above the game, like a student of the game who's not really one to be in the dressing room and with the lads, who the lads can kind of relate to and respond to. He's very much an on paper football purist in his kind of like, he likes theory and that kind of thing, and it just wasn't a good fit at all. We started well under him. We got a good response initially, as you tend to do with a new manager, have a bit of a bounce, changing formation, just freshen a few things up. But yeah, you could just tell as it went on that he was either losing the players very, very quickly, and he had very little ideas on what to do to fix it. And the biggest crime for me was the January transfer window, when it was clearly obvious that we needed the experience through the door. We needed a striker up front, given that we went into the season with 3 strikers with next to no League One experience, bar Brandon Hanlon. And we just didn't sign anyone. We signed George Williams at right back from MK Dons and a cover goalkeeper, and that was it. We signed those 2 very early on in the window, and it was very obvious that we needed maybe 2-3 more bodies through the door. Definitely a striker. He went all out for Jayden Stockley, who he obviously managed at Exeter City. Didn't get him because he obviously went to Charlton, who were paying more money. And then I think with 11 days left of the window, he pretty much said, well, if I can't get Stockley, then I don't want anyone. So I'll just sit on my hands. And for me, when the transfer window slammed shut and we had no more reinforcements, in my head, I was thinking, it's a hell of a job now to keep us up, because we are in the worst form in the division. We've got a manager who clearly isn't doing very well with the players, and he's just decided not to strengthen either. So where does that leave us? And lo and behold, 2-3 weeks later, he was sacked when the damage was already done.
You must be tearing your hair out as well, because obviously I had a few Mansfield fans on the preview show because we played Mansfield in the FA Cup, and it was just as your previous manager had been relieved of his duties. Now, I remember, obviously, I think you were fifth when he went. You had arguably the best striker in the division at the time. You look at that whole situation, he went, I think, for family reasons at the time. Hasn't worked out. He's been sacked. He's sitting, as far as I'm aware, unemployed. You've gone through three different managers who have three different theories and thoughts on the game. Do you kind of almost wish you could go back to that, being fifth in the league, and just convince Graham Coughlin to stay, maybe?
I think he would. I think he'd want to convince himself to stay as well, if I'm honest. Although he has just taken up a role as under-23s coach at Sheffield United as of this week. So
not a bad job.
It's a good job for him, and less pressure, obviously, as well. I think with Coughlin, he was a good fit for us at the time. He obviously had a good thing going. His had a very direct style that worked at this level when you have a striker like Clarke-Harris.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a good thing we had. And we just decided to change it completely. We couldn't really stop him leaving. That was his decision, family reasons. Once he was gone, what we did have control of is what our next step was, and that should have been, with us fifth in the league, to find someone who can play a similar style to keep things moving in the same direction. And what we did was we brought in a manager who'd only managed at under 23 level, who had no league experience, who liked to play possession football, and it was just the wrong fit. Lo and behold, we tumbled down the league because we had players that didn't fit that style. So yeah, and excuse me, and looking at the appointments we've made this season, there's just no consistency to what we're trying to do as a club. Garner, obviously, we were all bought into the idea of young players and trying to develop them and play possession football once he had a summer window to bring in players of that mould. It obviously didn't work too well. And then to bring in Tisdale, who's a completely different style of manager, and now Joey Barton to play firefighter, when really that's not something he's ever done before either. So three different styles of manager. You just have to question what the plan is at Rovers, really. We're just going from manager to manager, and just there's no, they keep talking about DNA in the press conferences and the Rovers DNA, but there's no consistency at all between the approach we're going for.
It's three different approaches, three different tactical styles, and three different characters completely. I mean, I won't go in too difficult and too hard on Joey Barton, but I suppose many Sunderland fans could. But Joey Barton's so different to Paul Tisdale. Like, Joey Barton is almost like one of the lads. I think he had that kind of camaraderie at Fleetwood, where it was almost like siege mentality. People started disliking Fleetwood. Obviously, he did it an awful lot against us. I don't think we've ever beat Fleetwood when he was in charge, and that changed the first game we played them without Joey Barton. But he's vastly different to everyone else that you've had previously. But we were talking a little bit last night, and I think it's fair to say your words were you were going to put your head through a brick wall. On your third manager of the season, I know there's 1,000,001 reasons when things go wrong, 1,000,001. But if you had to get the fans' opinion on what the one thing, the one problem that has put you in the position that it's in and caused the horrible season that you're having, what would be the thing you would pinpoint?
Not strengthening in January, for sure. Like I said, the squad we assembled in the summer, largely players who either had not played at senior level before or were under the age of 23. Like I said, the exceptions are Max Amer and Jack Baldwin, but everyone else pretty much to a T. Incredibly inexperienced, obviously high potential, but if you go all out on a squad like that with no real experienced spine, then you're going to run into problems, especially if you find yourself in a relegation fight. You need fighters, you need players who have been there and done it before. And came to the January window, and we signed a right back and a keeper to cover an injury, and that was it. And we were all just screaming, like, why are we not strengthening here? It's obvious we're on a bad run and we're near the bottom of the table and we need reinforcements. And for Paul Tisdale, I don't know if it was arrogance or frustration just to say, well, if I can't get Stockley, then I don't want anyone. It's just, yeah, it was so frustrating because then we effectively have to go into the second half of the season with the same players, but now with a worse mentality and on a downward trajectory, having had two managers and a third manager coming in. just to kind of build any kind of momentum becomes very difficult. So I would definitely say not signing key players in January. And I think had we had Joey Barton when Paul Tisdale came in, I think we'd probably be a lot better off than we currently are, because he would have strengthened in the areas where we need experience.
Always have more contacts there as well, I suppose. Not replacing Tisdale earlier and maybe bringing Barton in probably is another thing you could look at, because say what you want about Joey Barton, he's got contacts in there, especially at this level, as people he could have potentially brought in. While we're on recruitment, it would be wrong of me not to ask, but Jack Baldwin, kind of a Marmite figure at Sunderland, great on his day, had a great start, and then just didn't live up to the hype and seemed to falter under pressure, unfortunately for us. But how's he done for Bristol Rovers? How's he got on?
Been a bit of a Marmite figure, if I'm honest. He's he is exactly what you said he was when we spoke in the summer on Twitter about it, and he's got a mistake in him, and it's happened a few times. It happened last night. He gave away a clumsy free kick which led to their goal. He's given away cheap goals in the past, but he has had other games where he's been our best player, so he's very frustrating, and I think for most sides in this division he would probably be a fine centre back. But when you're struggling like we are and you're near the bottom, you can't afford mistakes like that in games, because you just, when you're holding on to a lead or you're drawing and you're trying to push for a winner and you just concede a mistake like that at the back, it's so costly. And especially when our team is this mentally fragile that we just don't recover from those positions. So he's definitely a Marmite figure. Some people are saying, just get rid of him and play Alfie Kilgore and Kean Harries, but both of those are so inexperienced as well that Max Aim has been ostracised from the club as well. So it's just a mess at the back. We're kind of relying on players who have got mistakes in them, like Baldwin and Leahy, to kind of lead by example. But there's only a matter of time before they give away another mistake and concede another goal.
It feels, Jack, that sounds like the Jack Baldwin I remember. Seemed like a really lovely fella. Came across very well on the Netflix show. One of few that came across well on that, to be fair. And you could have man of the match performances, like I think Bradford away comes out in my mind, where I think he even scored the winner. And then you've got 5-4 against Coventry, where I think he was culpable for at least 4 of the goals. So that does feel a bit like Jack Baldwin. You touched on Max Amer there, who I thought was a really good signing in the summer. He played very well for us last year at Gillingham, for Gillingham. Always kind of put in good performances when I'd seen him. He's been ostracised. What's happened there?
Well, he was appointed captain in the summer, but he's been an incredibly poor performer throughout the season. Gillingham fans said he wasn't a vocal captain for them. He was kind of a captain leading by example, but he's massively underperforming in a back 3 and a back 4. He's just not done the business, and in fact, he's been responsible for a lot of goals. Just generally like a 4 or 5 out of 10 every week at centre back. Not winning enough headers, not commanding or dictating play from back, not talking too much to his teammates, and certainly being at fault for a few goals. And I think that kind of culminated at the 6-1 loss to Accrington in February, the start of February. And he was at fault for probably 4 of the 6 goals. Just completely let his man go on several occasions, jogging back when a player sprinting through on goal, and that was his man. And I think at that point it was pretty obvious that he just didn't care, didn't have the right attitude. He didn't even put out an apology as captain of the football club after that defeat. We were saying on the podcast the next day, for nobody to come out of the football club and say, we apologise to the fans for the defeat and the manner of the defeat, it's unacceptable and we bounce back. And there was just nothing. Just shows how ineffective a leader of the dressing room he was, and indeed as a player. So I think from that point on, the writing was on the wall for him. He's been frozen out of the squad for the most part since then. Joey Barton gave him a chance this past couple of weeks, but both times he's been hooked off at half time. So he's either had a clash with Joey or just has fallen out with most of the squad, and it's pretty obvious. I think he's going to leave in the summer, and I think he'll have a good choice of League One clubs to go to, but for whatever reason at Rovers, it's just not worked out.
Talking about Joey Barton, we have to come on to him. Obviously, there's a thing between both of us as touched on before, but I've noticed in his press conferences in the past few weeks when he's been speaking about the games, he does seem a bit dejected for one, but he also seems to have a bit of frustration at the players and how the players are performing. Do you think he's kind of already worked out, such as Max Zimmer, which players he knows are not going to be with him in the trenches, basically? Has he worked that out quite fast, do you think?
I think he's figured it out, and I think he's maybe realised it's too many players. I don't think he can field an 11 he's happy with, because there's too many who just aren't up for the fight. I think it was either yesterday or today, he put an interview saying that he feels like he's a surgeon, and there's a cancer he needs to remove from the club in terms of attitude and culture, and he can't do that until he has a transfer window, which is, I disagree with the way he's been talking in the press and almost like alienating a few players when it's quite obvious he's probably going to need to rely on a few of them before the season ends. So it's a bit questionable the way he's going about it, but maybe it's a gambit. He's trying to maybe up a few of their games. A few of them need to realise that they're out of contract in the summer as well, and if they don't get their acts together, they might not play at the level they want to play at.
With Joey Barton, it's a manager I don't think anyone necessarily wants, if I'm completely not honest with you. I think a lot of people look at Joey Barton and go, not at my club. But then, as we spoke sort of off air before, I've spoke to Fleetwood fans to say, well, once he's yours, he's kind of, you quite like him. It sort of changes, but it's very early in his tenure. It's probably difficult to make an assumption on how you really feel about him. But in the first few weeks, based on his demeanour, what he said in the press conferences and the way he's coming across as manager of your football club, how are the fans and yourself taken to him?
Yeah, quite warmly, I would think. I think a lot of people were against it, myself partially included in that. I was kind of wary of, obviously, his history. But, once he's appointed, you can't do anything to change it. You can't, have a mass protest outside the ground saying, get him out. You have to get behind him, especially when you're in a relegation dogfight and you need to kind of have a bit of unity at the club to hope you can survive. And he's certainly saying all the right things, talking about, can't wait to get the fans back and trying to build a culture of us being like united rather than, split as we were under Tisdale. A lot of people felt very distant from the club, especially with Garner as well, didn't feel very attached to him. So he's definitely tried to build a relationship with the fans, even with the fans not in the ground. He's very active on Twitter, posts messages of support after games and pictures of letters fans are sending him. So he's definitely trying to ingrain himself of the culture of Rovers. He's using the right terminology. So he talks about the mem and the history of the club. He's done his homework for sure. And he kind of stands out in that aspect versus Tisdale, who just kind of rocked up another League One job. I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. I can do a job here. And then just complaining when it went wrong and left. And never really felt any attachment to him. And Barton's definitely going for that angle. Now, in terms of whether I'm a massive fan of him yet, it's still very early, and I am finding some of his recent presses a bit harder to swallow than his PR campaign at the start of his tenure, because the results aren't there at the minute. And when you do have a run of losses, I think we've lost 5 on the bounce away from home. It does start to wear a bit thin. All the positivity it does kind of wane on you a bit, I guess.
With Joey Barton coming up against us on Saturday, I think when he was at Fleetwood, he very often made it Joey Barton versus Sunderland, and I think even Fleetwood fans felt like that, and they didn't care because we never beat them. Do you think that could work in your favour on Saturday? The fact that there will be an onus away from Bristol Rovers as a team, a little bit will be on Joey Barton versus Sunderland because of previous.
Well, I hope so. I think we need an extra incentive into this match beyond, relegation strugglers versus promotion chasers, because usually it's the latter that comes out on top in those exchanges, especially when you have a team low on confidence. So we definitely need some kind of edge to give the game something else, to maybe turn it in our favour. In some games you have an incident like a red card or a controversial decision that kind of can rejuvenate a side. And if there's something like that in this game, with Joey Barton having maybe a grudge against Sunderland and the size of the club and this level, we've all seen the clip of the Fleetwood documentary that's not been aired of him saying the barbarians that are at the gates and trying to G up the team. Yeah, that's all very well when you've got fans in the ground, but when it's empty stadiums and there's no real fire or connection with the ground they're playing in, it's very hard, I think, for Barton to have that siege mentality at the minute at Rovers.
Yeah, and I think he thrives off it, doesn't he? I think he thrives off that us against the world thing, almost kind of like Paolo Di Canio tried to do it with us, and obviously that failed and didn't do very well. But I think Joey Barton's had a lot more success than he has in most recent years. Now, we played each other on opening day of the season, and last time we previewed it, it was kind of like we hadn't played for 6 months. The players were totally different. Everything had changed, and we had a conversation about Jonson Clarke-Harris. Now, you mentioned that the way that Ben Garner was playing kind of didn't play to his strengths. So, like, were you really going to be losing that much? Because he's probably not going to be involved in the same way that he was under Graham Coughlin. But you've gone into the season, I was looking at the table, you're currently the third lowest goal scorers, I think, behind Northampton and AFC Wimbledon. And Jonson Clarke-Harris is still up there in the goal scoring charts. But 6 months on, do you view the move any differently to how we thought it would have went? Or do you think it still would have just went that like south anyway, with the fact that Garner played not to his strengths?
Well, the problem with losing him is that you've got to replace him. And, you know, it's all very well saying replace a 20, 25 goal striker. You just can't do that at this level, but at least replace him with a 15, 16 goal striker. Other teams around us have done it. You look at Gillingham, they've got some fantastic goal scorers at that club, which they picked up on free transfers. And we signed Brandon Hanlon, who had barely a full season at Gillingham, and he played on wing as our main replacement for Clarke-Harris. And he's only got 9 goals, I think, to this day, Brandon Hanlon, and his hold-up play is just abysmal. He's got a dreadful touch, and we can't build anything around him. So we've had to rely on our backup striker, who we signed from Havant and Waterlooville, Jonah Ayunga, to kind of be the anchor point. And Jonah's done really well. He's developed well over the season. Now he's kind of up to speed with the level versus when he started. I remember him coming on against you guys on the opening day, and he looked so rusty and so raw. But in recent games, he's looked really sharp, really tidy, turns nicely, holds the ball up well. So we have strikers who, they don't score goals ultimately. That's the problem. You know, Hanlon's got good pace on him. He's got a few tricks, and Ayunga's got really good hold-up play and strength, and he's probably one of the biggest blokes you'll ever see at this level. He looks like a rugby player, honestly. But they don't score goals. Ayunga had a brilliant chance to score an equaliser last night. He chested it down in the box in 5 yards of space and just scuffed it with his weak foot. And that's the difference. I mean, losing Clarke-Harris, obviously every team in the league would suffer from losing a goal scorer like that. But if you replace it with a guy who played on wing for Gillingham and a guy from Havant and Waterlooville in the National League South, you're just asking for trouble, I'm afraid.
So when you're mentioning about the strikers that you brought in, because Brandon Hanlon's done all right against us last season, but he is very much a different striker at the very least to Jonson Clarke-Harris. He's more like a over-the-shoulder winger. He's not going to score you 25 goals. I'd be surprised if he got the sort of 15. But a lot of it comes back through the conversation that we've had to recruitment. Again, another thing Sunderland have failed with a lot of the time in recent years. Is there anyone in specific that's in charge of recruitment at the club, or has it been a case of, because you've had different managers, you've had basically different managers having players that they probably didn't want, that they're forced to play with, as you touched on before?
We have a director of football, Tommy Widgerington, and he's kind of, well, he was head scout at the start of the season, and Ben Garner would tell him what kind of player he wants, what kind of age, and he would go out and find him someone. So his role was ultimately to expand kind of the pool of available players and present them to the manager. The manager always has final say at Rovers, and they can use their own contacts, of course. If Ben Garner brought with James Daly with him, who he worked with at Crystal Palace. So, the manager's always got final say and decisions on the direction that they want to go in with the recruitment. But yeah, Tommy Widgerington is in charge of head of scouting really, and just provides good options. Well, supposed to provide good options, but the options he's provided clearly haven't been up to the League One standard. When Tisdale came in, obviously he went after George Williams from MK Dons, who he worked with when he was manager there, and he also went after Jayden Stockley, who he'd previously worked with. So to me, that indicated that he didn't like anything Tommy Widgerington was offering him. He wasn't keen on any of the suggestions of signings, and his own personal scouting range clearly wasn't up to scratch either, because he just opted to sign no one there. So yeah, we work with the director of football now. He's been promoted, which is baffling to me considering he's largely not done too well as a head scout, albeit he did bring in Jonson Clarke-Harris. So yeah, I mean, Joey Barton, I don't think he's gonna lean into Widgerington too much. He'll have his own ideas on who's good at this level. He's managed at League One for a couple of seasons, so he knows who's good at this level and who isn't. Looks like he will probably going to go down to League Two though, so maybe he will have to lean into those contacts a bit more.
So moving away from obviously Bristol Rovers ever so slightly, going on to Saturday's game, as I've said before, we're in great form. We're looking to continue that, obviously, against Bristol Rovers. We want to be going there and winning the game. If we've got anything about ourselves, we kind of have to. But where do you worry that Sunderland could damage you? Where are you weak and where do you find us particularly strong?
That's a good question. And it's not something I can always pinpoint with Rovers, because a lot of games we look largely competent, we look fine. And then it's just a mistake. It's a defensive mistake or a bit of pace to get in behind a half chance that's scored by the opposition. And I would say the mentality is what Sunderland should target, because if you score early, you're probably going to win the game. Rovers have a tendency to just drop heads when things don't go our way. We saw it recently at Charlton. We went 2-0 up, brilliant start to the match, and then straight from kickoff, they pull one back. And as soon as it was 2-1, I was opening my betting app and putting £10 on Charlton to win, because it was just obvious what was going to happen next. The players were panicking. They were too rushed on the ball, trying to make amends for the mistakes and just overcompensating and not keeping it simple and sticking to the game plan. And it was 2-2 at half time, and I had every confidence that in the second half, Charlton would score the third, and they did. It's just so predictable with Rovers. You know, concede a goal against the run of play or even early on, and we just don't have it in us to fight on the pitch and stick to a game plan. We just panic and start hoofing it long. And I would say the plan for Sunderland probably should be to attack fast and attack early.
Where do you think the fragility comes from? Do you think it's just the age of the players you got on the pitch?
Yeah, I would say the inexperience of the younger players, but the older players we do have in the squad don't have that killer instinct, I don't think, either. Likes of Tony Craig last season, an absolute warrior he is, was released. He signed for Crawley Town, and you know we've really missed him. A player like him. Jono was the same. He was a winner by nature. We've all seen that killer instinct he's got up front, and Abu Agogo in midfield, just heart and desire, and we just didn't have that spine this year. And just like the players like Jack Baldwin, Max Amer, even Luke Leahy, who I think's been one of our better players this season, just the heads drop, and you need those senior players to lead by example and say to the younger lads, we're still in this match. There's still 20 minutes left. Like last night, we go 1-0 down. I think there's 16, 17 minutes left of the game. We gave up, just gave up. And you really need somebody to just grab the team by the scruff of the neck and say, we have 20 minutes here, let's go get a goal. And we just don't have that, I'm afraid. So, yeah.
From a Bristol Rovers perspective, I'll be honest, you sound quite exasperated, and I think you're probably not surprised to hear me say that. From a Sunderland perspective, I probably sound dead chilled and happy as Larry. We only really watch our own team, if we're honest. We'll watch Quest for 5 minutes here or there. Some of us will know a little bit more about other teams than others, but we only really watch our own team, especially in the current world that we have. But from what you know, from the outside looking in, if you were a betting man, which you said before you were, do you expect Sunderland to be in one of those automatic promotion spots come season end?
It's a tough one. There's a few teams who ebb and flow. I think Hull are probably the best team I've seen this season. Peterborough were decent the two times I saw them play. With a striker like Clarke-Harris, they can win any game, even from a losing position. So, yeah, I mean, the only time I've seen Sunderland has been the opening day of the season, where I thought you were largely the better side. Just we were defending bodies on the line, which we haven't really seen since. Yeah, I would say you have I think it's 2 from 3 between Hull, Peterborough, and yourselves.
I'd agree
so
with
I
that.
think you've got every chance, I reckon, even in playoffs.
Fingers crossed it's us. I don't want to do playoffs. And always, as I always ask, I've never got one of them right this season. I was going to go 1-1 last week, and I decided to go and be more positive and said 2-1. Unfortunately, it was 1-1, so I was wrong again. But score predictions, I'm going to go with, it's been 2-0 whenever we've played at the Mem to either side. So I'm going to go 2-0 Sunderland. But what's your predictions for Saturday?
I'm also going to go with 2-0 to Sunderland for pretty much the exact reason. I don't know if it's just embedded in my memory that the past couple of encounters have been 2-0, but yeah, I don't see us scoring. We've not looked bright in front of goal for a few games. And yeah, I think the quality Sunderland possess is just going to be too much for us at a time where we're pretty mentally fragile.
Fingers crossed, for me anyway. But good luck for the rest of the season after Saturday.
Thank you.
Kind of, you have got Joey Barton on your hands, so you've kind of soured the relationship a bit there, Max. But thanks as always for coming back on. I always appreciate it. You always speak well. And genuinely, though, good luck for the rest of the season after Saturday, mate.
Thank you. I hope to speak to you next season, mate.
Well, I don't.
Well, actually, no. Now I've said that, I just realised what that means.
But we are Sunderland. We probably will, mate. So who knows?